Welcome to Ideagen TV. We have with us today Microsoft VP US AI and Sustainability Strategy and Partnership, Gretchen O'Hara. Gretchen, welcome.
Thank you, George. It's great to be here. Very excited.
You know, Gretchen, what an incredible time to be in the innovation business. It's an opportunity to help change the world given the current global circumstances. And what an exciting new role you have at Microsoft. Can you explain a bit for our global audience?
Happy to. I'm Vice President of our AI and Sustainability Strategy. And essentially, I have one of the best jobs on the planet. I have the opportunity to really make a market in a holistic and inclusive way to really rise all boats, if so to speak, to help customers, partners, our government, our communities really be better together through the enablement of technology or critical areas of in our sustainability, such as our sustainability and accessibility. So really the idea behind this is I now, in partnership with great partners such as Ideagen, really focus on the activation of the UN's SDG goals.
Well, clearly that's incredible. And, we're looking at so many different elements of innovation, especially AI. And so how do you think AI is going to play a role in helping us to ultimately achieve the 17 global goals of the UN? Obviously, there's so much happening at Microsoft with AI. Where do we begin, right? And so could you share a few examples of AI projects with our global audience?
Yeah, well, you just mentioned at the opening of the show, I mean, we are still in a global pandemic and our entire lives are changing the way we work, the way we interact with our family and friends, how we operate as citizens, how we operate in our communities. And so everything from education to the workplace to how we're actually going to get to a vaccine, all of this is coming together. And at the heart of this, and you think about what AI can do, and you think about the big goals for the SDGs, all of a sudden we have the opportunity to really infuse technology and innovation, as you had mentioned, George, earlier, into the present to make sure we are preserving the future of the big goals that we're focused on. And so AI can do this in a way that we've never actually in leaps and bounds been able to do before. And I'll give you just a couple examples. Healthcare, we're in this crisis right now. We're struggling to find a vaccine. There's massive amount of data across the world, across every country. In the past, just trying to harness that much data to be able to share in any way has been very, very challenging. We've been able to partner actually across the globe to bring the biggest set of healthcare data together and then make it accessible with AI or artificial intelligence, specifically building a healthcare bot with the CDC. So what does this do? Well, all of a sudden, all of the vulnerable people who can't go into the doctor today, quite frankly, don't know if they have symptoms or not, are they COVID positive? I now have a healthcare bot that actually has natural language and all of this incredible intelligence data that sits everywhere at the fingertips for all of our payers, all of our providers. Everyone now can service our citizens and service our communities by having people help understand, hey, do I need to come in and see the doctor? Hey, should we have a teledoc conversation today? Maybe I should just stay home. No, I'm fine. So those are just a brief example of one of the things that is really important from an AI perspective as we address healthcare and accessibility for healthcare. Another example is really closing the digital divide. And one of the biggest challenges in rural communities across the world, and certainly in the United States, is access to broadband. So if you want to be competitive in education for your students, if you want to have access to healthcare, as we just talked about, if you want to be competitive in the job that are available in the future, you have to have access to broadband. You have to be able to connect to people now at a global world. So Microsoft just announced today an incredible coalition with a customer of ours, Land O'Lakes, actually one of the largest farmer coalitions and co-ops actually in the world, and really together, along with additional private partners, public and private partnerships. um, the idea behind it is that we will go into rural communities, we will give access to broadband, we will close the digital divide because education becomes available, healthcare becomes available. Children and workers that are working in rural communities actually stay competitive in the market. So we're really, really excited about that partnership that we're just announcing on the coalition of American Connection Project Broadband Coalition. And these are coalitions that we're doing across the globe. And so as we think about the work we're doing across the world right now, we're looking at global coalitions where we can come together and provide that access to healthcare. And we can look at climate change, which we'll talk a little bit about. And we think about access to education, ensuring that we are really closing the digital divide and not actually making it broader in a time where technology, and George, once again, you said innovation plays a really critical role here in this time.
Gretchen, that's so heartening to hear, Microsoft leading on these issues and partnering, of course, as always. What's remarkable that I've seen for your company, Microsoft, is that you were creating and committed to partnerships across sectors, quite frankly, before the pandemic. And those same partnerships today are what are helping folks connect the dots, especially here as we look at the digital divide, as you mentioned. What an incredible opportunity to take from what is this global situation that we're in, creating solutions which ultimately are tied to the Sustainable Development Goals for education, healthcare, finance, access to credit, et cetera. All of these things that you're working on, carbon neutral and negative. I mean, incredible work that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later as well. And so what do you believe is the biggest benefit of implementing AI for a company? And do you feel that there might be some disadvantages with implementing or including AI in business process?
Yeah, I think couple things. As I've talked over the last, as I've taken this role and talked to many companies, partnerships, community leaders, etc. Where does AI really help at the customer and the industry level? Really in three key areas. One, and you mentioned a little bit, this is kind of around business process optimization. How can I be smarter? Think about the value chain and the supply chain and the disruption actually in manufacturing that we just had as an example. How do we actually leverage AI to be smarter and optimize some of the processes that we have within our business or within the supply chain? The second, I think AI actually will do is really innovate at the employee level. So making smarter decisions. I'm in the financial services business, bringing better expertise and insight into my customers, being able to make bigger, smarter bets in the right way based on real information and insights that will come in from our AI capabilities. The third area, I think that certainly really helps in this time for AI and customers is really servicing the customer, so customer service. Thinking about the chat bots, thinking about natural language, thinking about ways to be able to serve up smarter and anticipate information that needs to be connected with people becomes a way to provide a much higher level of customer service, quite frankly, than before. Satisfies the customer because they get to answers faster, becomes more helpful in the engagement, and ultimately that customer service accrues to an incredible brand of the customer, and ultimately at the end of the day, that is happy customers, more revenue for the customer, and that whole experience continues to evolve around the growth. So having tech intensity and thinking about how to really future-proof your business through innovation and technology, certainly cloud, but AI at the forefront of that, will get you ready for, quite frankly, what are the dynamics that are going to happen in the market. Everybody that was actually already looking at how to change and automate the way I do business, how do I service my customers better, how do I make smarter and better decisions to help my employees. When companies are doing that digital transformation, Then, depending on what happens in the market, either it's market disruption through competition, or in this case, market disruption through a global pandemic, we're ready. And you've future-proofed the business. And so we want to be there helping from an AI perspective, ensure that that every customer, quite frankly, every government, every community can have those capabilities available to them in an inclusive and fair and equitable way. And so that leads to the downside of AI. And I've had conversations with many leaders here in Ideagen. What is happening? Why aren't we even going faster with AI? Well, a couple things. First is there's still a trust issue. There's a lot of, science fiction around, what happens when the computer takes over the world, and, do I really trust my information to AI, and what is it actually going to give me, on the other end of something? And so we have to get through that. And we have to make sure we owe, as an industry, as a leader at Microsoft, we absolutely owe an ethical approach and a trusted approach to AI. So, for example, lots of conversation right now in the news around facial recognition and the ability to have bias in that facial recognition. And is that something that we would give to law enforcement, to help potentially create more bias and hurt? So we have a ethical AI board at Microsoft. We run everything not just through, do we have the technology that's capable to do these things, but is it ethical? Do we have privacy? Do we have trust? And do we have the right policy, regulations, and laws in place to make sure that every person on the planet is actually benefiting and being protected? And that is part of our remit and something that we work on every day. So we'll continue to always improve on the downside and try and make sure that if you're using Microsoft Cloud and AI, that it has gone through a very deep set of rigorous standards for both policy making, privacy, and trust and ethics.
Well, I think, and that's another, always so incredibly eloquent, Gretchen, and what I really believe is so remarkable about how you just described everything is the ethical piece. I mean, I think what is lacking in a lot of interactions today across the board, from news sources, so many different news sources, where do you go? What is that trusted source? And I believe that Microsoft is really leading on being ethical and being the front runner on so many issues, right? And that's what I think people see, is when it starts at the top with Satya's leadership and having folks like you leading up such incredible components of Microsoft, you start to say, well, gosh, I trust the technology. I trust that they're looking at all the aspects of AI, the positives and the potential negatives. And I think that's where you lead. That's leadership.
Yeah. Thank you. We, like I said, between Satya Nadella, who is our CEO, Brad Smith, who leads this here as our president of Microsoft, it's our responsibility. And I think this is why we're all here talking today. It's our responsibility as business leaders in the public sector, the combination to really get after the SDG goals in a holistic and inclusive way. And we want to do that as part of Microsoft for sure.
Well, that's what's incredible. And you're actually leading on helping to achieve the goals as a company, and you're partnering and doing all the rest to make sure that it's possible. Again, we were in January, not so long ago, it feels like.
Not long ago.
Not long ago, and things seemed like, okay, we're on the runway to achieving the goals. It's a 10-year span. Here, 6-7 months later, we're in a completely different world where everybody has been affected by this global pandemic. And yet we see time and time again that the technologies that are built by Microsoft and that, are led by Microsoft in terms of connecting the dots are helping to continue a level of functionality from education to the financial industry, as you mentioned, to addressing the digital divide. That's accelerating so that no one's left behind. And so we pivot now to sustainability. We all know that Microsoft is a front runner in sustainability, including the absolutely phenomenal recent announcement that you will be carbon negative by 2030. And unfathomable several years ago, right? can you discuss how Microsoft will actually execute this strategy for this incredible commitment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the reasons I was so excited to take this leadership position, because we have spent so much time learning how to do this at Microsoft with our data centers, with our real estate, with our employees. And it was time for us to make that big commitment to the market. And as you said, lead the way to help our suppliers, our supply chain, our vendors, and quite frankly, all of our partners, help them provide a way forward. So how do we do that? How do we actually make this happen? Three ways, really. First is just in the innovation and the technology. So we're applying everything that we're bringing out into the market into how we do it at Microsoft. So as we look at getting to carbon negative, that is everything that we're applying using innovation and technology at our data center to be able to do some of that work as well. The second is we need everyone helping, and we need to enable all of these incredible technology partnerships and innovation. And so we've announced a $1 billion innovation fund that will basically help fund and accelerate other technologies, hacks, startups, agencies that have contribution in some way that can help us all achieve this goal together. And that becomes a really big one. And then the third one is, and the one I have a lot of questions around, is business model. And so we really think about applying the business model to help really just even Microsoft achieve that goal, and then showcase what type of business model is working to get other companies to assist and help from that. So for an example of that, we are building, by cutting in half our carbon emissions, a carbon fee tax as an example. So business groups have goals, have accountabilities that they have to achieve, and then we apply that carbon tax to those different groups, which gives additional incentive to help actually us achieve those goals. So we're going to continue to innovate both on the business model and then the technology to help improve everything from the analytics to the managing of and monitoring to actually how we solve some of these big problems together.
And on the impact, what are some of the other incredibly inspiring highlights in AI and sustainability at Microsoft to help in those areas?
Well, so one of the things that we've talked a lot about around sustainability is education. And we have seen an impact around the globe, certainly from COVID, the unemployment rates around the globe, people that have impacted in some way. That can be students, but it actually can be just workers that have been impacted based on jobs or the industry that they might be in. And so we wanted to come out in a very big way, at a global way, and say, hey, we actually need to close the digital divide, not only on the education for our students, but actually make sure that we are being inclusive for workforce of the future. And so we announced an initiative called the Global Skills Initiative, which essentially is going to help 25 million people that have been impacted by COVID in some way get access to training, career and professional development training, access to learning curriculum and education, subsidized and oftentimes free certifications, things that are needed to help prepare and get people back into work, help people get prepared for the workforce of the future, and help our rising students make sure that they're prepared to be competitive in our economy moving forward. Very, very excited about that work. And that is, something, again, where technology is at the heart of it, but this is around partnerships, this is around coalitions, this is around coming together to really help all of our countries around the world recover. One of the other things that then very exciting that we just announced is an initiative called Accelerate. And our first city was Accelerate Atlanta in the United States. But the idea behind this is essentially in partnership with the local city and local government and Chamber of Commerce and our corporate partners, as well as some of our technology partners. we're coming together to provide a very end-to-end learning approach to make sure that we go after the underserved communities that, quite frankly, we're concerned can be potentially left behind as innovation continues to go forward, as well as reskill and retrain many people that the jobs won't be back, or they won't be the same as they will when we come out of the pandemic. And so it's really important that we provide a broad platform for every individual on the planet globally to get skilled and be competitive. And then we want to activate each and every community, city, country through Accelerate to really help build economic development and growth and recovery from COVID in a very inclusive way, so that we have a inclusive workforce of the future.
Well, again, what an incredible moment in time with the work that you're doing. I mean, we see such huge impact, and we see such opportunity, especially in addressing the digital divide in cities and towns across America and truly across the planet. In a recent interview with the EU ambassador to the United States, I heard several similar themes. They're trying to address the digital divide. They're trying to address reskilling, upskilling, and all of the areas where there's an opportunity with technology. And I love what you said, as always, about combining it with collaboration and partnerships, which is built into the ethos of Microsoft.
Yeah,
it's part of your DNA.
It's part of our DNA, and we cannot do this alone. We cannot be alone in this journey. The power is us bringing all of us together and activating an ecosystem to really go after these common goals together. And we have the common goals. We're here, we're talking about the common goals. That's the beautiful thing. So how do we rally together and build these private and public partnerships together, activate an ecosystem to really make that change? And so really exciting opportunity for all of us today.
Incredibly exciting. And so it's a perfect pivot to your advocacy, your incredible support and advocacy of the empowerment of women and girls. As a successful woman in the tech industry, obviously, you've accomplished. Gretchen, what bit of advice would you give to young women pursuing a career in tech?
Well, first of all, I would say that technology is going to be something that's infused in every discipline that you will be in. So one of the very first things for advice for women is don't be intimidated. Don't feel that tech is only for the computer science or the developer or the highly technical. Technology is going to be democratized and available for everybody. And to be competitive, you will need to have tech intensity in your vernacular in any sort of role of the future that you go for. So first of all, don't shy away from something that's going to be important for you your entire life. The second then is that, oftentimes, we have said to, be bold and, go after things and sort of be fearless. My whole message is really empowerment. Making sure that you feel like you have the opportunity to really be fierce, to be bold, to have confidence, to be able to go after the things that are really important to you. And in any situation, and tech is certainly no different, you're going to run into obstacles. And obstacles might be, we don't have as many female representation in technology. That's where my advocacy comes in. We want to make sure we see more of an equitable balance around that. And not only from a diversity perspective, which is certainly important to have a diverse perspective around innovation, but essentially it's just good business. And so my work has really been focused on not only empowering women and girls from the classroom, quite frankly, all the way to the boardroom, and making sure there's representation across, because it helps with economic development and growth, which is another one of our goals. And so again, diversity is super important, but this is also good business. And when we fund female entrepreneurs, when we make sure that we don't see female girls drop out through the grades of education, and we maintain and retain and grow, we actually will see exponential growth in the market that comes from all of this innovation and ideas with these leaders.
It's truly remarkable to think about, and this is really what you're describing as the business case for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, because a company can do better and actually do more good. And isn't that a beautiful cycle to be able to change the world by doing more good? So there's a clear, what I'm hearing is a very clear business case for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And so another part of this is challenges. And so, Gretchen, what did you find to be the most challenging part of a career in the tech sector? With your work as co-founder of Women in Cloud, the accelerator, in partnership, of course, with Ideagen, we are collectively scaling globally. How has this work also inspired you?
Yeah, I think that the issues I face, and I talk a lot about some of the things that I faced early on in my career. I wanted to just fit in. Okay, so I would say I really didn't focus so much on the advocacy early on because I was just trying to really fit in. And I think a lot of people, especially challenges back then, were doing things which we call covering. Do I have to look a certain way? Do I have to dress a certain way? Do I have to be in a certain club, with a certain set of people to be able to have a seat at the table? And, that becomes really hard and becomes really tiresome. And, we've come a long way from when I started in the tech industry over 25 years ago in terms of how female is represented, for sure. But we have a long way to go. I mean, we only have about 17% of female representation holistically in our tech roles today, and we definitely need to do much better, both in the education side and the upside. And so, how do I remove some of those barriers that I had, so that my next generation of leaders don't necessarily have those? So the one is, being able to be your authentic self. Talking about authenticity is absolutely, critical. And I talked about, my challenge of covering, and I would get advice of your hair had to be a certain way, or you had to look a certain way, or if you dressed too nice, you weren't taken serious, and this and that. And regardless of what it is, and I recognize still there's covering for many, many people across the world today, the hope and the aspiration is that you can be your authentic self. And that obviously that your authentic self has to sit within the the boundaries of ethics, as we talked about, certainly, and the importance of the responsibility, corporate responsibility that we're all here around. But you should be able to be a leader and have your voice in that way. And then the other one is considering just continuing that blocker of empowerment. How do I find mentors that could mentor me through to be the hand raiser back then? Who gave me the encouragement to say, I could do something like this, in tech when I was the only female in the room, or sometimes like even in the building. Who inspired you to be able to do that? And so those were some of the blockers of sort of lack of mentorship, lack of, female, mentorship and sponsorship, quite frankly, to help remove some of those blockers. Those are some of the things that, we want to be able to change today. We want to make sure that everybody is being a mentor to the next generation of students and student leaders. We want to make sure that allyship becomes so important, that we understand why we need that. When I was going through my tech journey, very early days, my mentors were men. I mean, that's who was in the tech field at the time. And, you might say, oh, now we got to get more, female representation and more female mentorship. But actually, I want just as many men and women in cloud as I do females, because we need that allyship. We need that partnership for sure. And some of my best allyship actually came from my male counterparts, and getting that education out there of what allyship means and what allyship we can do for each other is certainly a really important one, as well. The last I'll just say, just in terms of like the challenge and where we're going is, I talked a little bit about empowerment, and then that comes to confidence. There are studies that are shown that, women actually have to have, 100% of the qualifications to go for any kind of job, as respective to men, that if I'm like about 60%, I probably have a chance of getting that. What usually happens is you have to be overqualified to think that you have that opportunity to get that next role, that next job. So we need to continue to support. We need to continue to build confidence. We need to continue to give access to these females that are coming up the ranks, to these females that are becoming future leaders. We need to make sure that we're giving opportunity and access so that we can be able to change the game.
Well, that's certainly changing the game, and you have led, especially on that issue, and we've seen it. And for that, I know so many millions of women across the planet have heard you through all of your work. And so you provided a real lesson, a lesson plan, a roadmap for young women in tech. And recently, you taught a lesson for the Ideagen Future Global Leaders Academy, which is focused on youth across the board from across the planet. How was this experience of teaching youth about the SDGs, ironically? What was the most rewarding part of that?
So first of all, I could not be a bigger supporter of this program in general. I think it is needed. I think it is inspirational, and I think our future leaders and our youth have ideas that honestly we haven't even come up with yet. And so to be able to come and bring a course together focused on this, you're getting the best kind of minds and growth mindset around some of the very hardest challenges in the world. So I'll just start by saying it's an incredible program. I was very honored to be able to have a lecture. And I think one of the things for me that was the most rewarding was to be able to showcase where we've been and open eyes to sort of where we can go. And, and then we get to take it from there. It's providing construct and innovation and helping understand sort of where and how we're shaping the way that we are applying and solving some of the world's biggest challenges. But, we can't stop there. We have to be able to be working now to preserve our future, and that is the future on the glass. And so my most rewarding thing is to get these individuals inspired and thinking about the art of what's possible that quite frankly might not even come across any of our minds yet, and really get them on a path of doing incredible things for the future. So super rewarding for me. I hope it was an exciting lecture for the class, and look forward to doing more of that.
Well, and another example of how you're leading, Gretchen, it's truly remarkable. And what would you say is your call to action for the millions of people that will see this interview?
I will repeat myself. If you've seen me on other things, I'll say it's kind of the same thing, which is just take action. Oftentimes, we think things have to be in a big, huge commitment for us to be able to make real change. And actually, it's just the little things that you can start on, whether you're an individual, whether you are a business leader, whether you're a community leader. Sometimes it's just taking that first step and being able to take an action of any kind that accrue to incredible things. So, for me, it's just take that first step, take action. Can you be a mentor to somebody or several people? Can you bring more people into the networks and the consortiums, Women in Cloud being one of them, but many that span the globe in terms of how we solve these challenges? Can you join and participate? If you're in the business sector, have you just simply asked, hey, have I given this supplier, this vendor, this partner an opportunity? Have I talked to any female representation of the businesses of which I'm going to reward this contract to? Just even doing self-assessment to take one step to say, hey, I'm going to continue to focus on our diversity and inclusion. I'm going to focus on diverse perspective. I'm going to focus on inclusive engagement, across all. And when you take that first step, it's amazing what you can do to change the world.
Incredibly well said. Gretchen O'Hara, Microsoft's VP for US AI and Sustainability Strategy and Partnership. We appreciate your leadership, your global leadership, vision, insights. Thank you so much.
George, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining today. It's going to be an incredible set of conversations. Cannot wait.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thanks.